Okay, so I'm here today with Belle DiLorenzo. I tried my Italian flair.
Nailed it.
So Belle is the author of a phenomenal book called The Goddess Method. You are the creator of an online platform that, you describe it as teaching women vaginal gymnastics. I describe it as vaginal kung fu. Like, I mean, just to me, like when I think of my
Love
work,
it.
I'm like, this is like the martial arts.
I love it.
It is so, it's such a phenomenal program. And Belle, I'm so excited to have you here because, whether or not, I mean, I think that everyone tuning into this series is actually going to be intimately interested in sexual desire per se. But I would say one of the things that's really unique about your work, and I do want to get your thoughts on this as we start talking. Independent of sexual desire, it seems to me that a woman being in touch with this, it's like the portal into being, the portal of life, right? The vaginal connection. There's an opportunity for strength, courage, vitality, confidence. Like it's so much more than about. I mean, sex could be enough, right? Like let's really just say sexual awakening could be enough, but I do think that your work is about so much more, and I am so excited to chat with you and find out, how it came to be. I mean, I read your book. I know a little bit about how it came to be. I'm excited for everybody else to hear how it came to be. So please tell us your story.
Ooh, well, thank you. That was such a beautiful introduction. And we were just talking about the book and that you read it and your wonderful story on how you found my work, which I think is just lovely. And you spoke about this friend of yours. And I love this because something that starting this endeavor has given me is just so many connections to so many great women, that one of the aspects, and yes, the sex is just amazing and wonderful, and we're gonna dive into that. But something that's very beautiful about this is just how great it is to connect with other women, and how great it is for these women to connect with their own femininity. And this is something that um, it tends to happen for women who are very maybe entrepreneurial or very assertive, or women who are very ambitious. Sometimes it happens to women like us, probably, that we kind of feel disconnected, and maybe even femininity feels like a weakness or like a bad word. And something beautiful that this practice has is just sort of reconnecting with the how beautiful femininity can be and how great your body is. So that's something that I find really great, and I love that your friend brought you to this. So my journey is quite particular because I was very much a late bloomer when it came to sex. I was brought up in a religious household. I'm from Buenos Aires. I'm from Argentina. We are very much people of faith, and my parents did not have the talk with me at all. In fact, my first conversation about sex with my mom was at 24 when I told her, "Oh, this is how I'm making money, mom. I'm teaching couples how to do crazy things with the woman's vagina so they have phenomenal sex." And that's why I'm inviting you to all of these restaurants and making money this way. And her first words were, "Baby, do you think Dad and I could get a discount?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." Um, so that's kind of how it happened for me. I started sex much later than every single one of my peers, but I had started my sexual sort of self-discovery much earlier. I talked in the
You
book
were like
about
an avid reader, right? Like a
oh, I was
student
very much I was
of
an
that
yeah, I'm an A type.
kindred
I was very
spirit.
much A type, anxious, very much straight A student, and all in all, just nerd. And so for me, I remember I had this wonderful teacher, a sex ed teacher at 14, um, who basically taught us all how to masturbate. It was crazy because she knew that a lot of my peers, definitely not me. I was not the popular kid, to say the least. But she basically said, a lot of you girls are having sex, but you don't know what you like, and you don't know, you don't know what sex is about. So she basically told us to go home, explore our own bodies, and figure out, what's between our legs. And I was like, well, I'm going to do the homework because I do my homework. So from that point on, from 15 to 21, it was just unadulterated self-discovery without any actual sex with any man. So I was very much I already knew about pleasure, and I was obsessed with sex. I was obsessed with the concept of sex. I was obsessed with the mystique of sex because it was very much taboo in my family. So it wasn't something that we talked about. It wasn't something that nobody was teaching me about, but I was so curious, just so extremely curious. So I would write all of these fan fictions about the characters that I liked on TV and how they would, rip each other's clothes off and do what I thought sex was, which probably I was very much mistaken. But I was just obsessed with the concept of sex. In fact, I started watching porn quite early as well. And so when I had in my mind that when the time came, I was going to be great at it. Like I was going to be the best at sex because that's how I approached life. And
Straight
so it
A
was a very
student through
bizarre,
and through,
it's a
right?
very bizarre way to go about it. But through that learning and that curiosity, I stumbled upon the word pompoir and this magical practice from women across history, across different countries, who were able to completely enamor men, the most powerful men, through the magic of their vaginas, and how Cleopatra allegedly did this with Julius Caesar, and that's what led to the siege of Alexandria, and how Kuchuk Hanem did this with different authors throughout Egypt, and just so many women throughout history who allegedly had incredible vaginas, and authors would write stories about them. It was insane. I was like, this is what I want to have. But there was no actual information on how to do it. There was no actual step-by-step. All that I could find was, Kegel training, and you contract, you relax. We all know what Kegels are, simple pelvic floor muscle contractions, which are phenomenal for preventing urinary incontinence, phenomenal for preventing organ prolapse. But that was not what I was reading. I was reading about women who were able to twist men inside of them with their vaginas. This was another level. So anyway, years went on, and I kept on researching, but then I kind of quit because there was just nothing specific about this out there. Then I was in a relationship where it's a very familiar non-original story of everything was right except for the sex. We were great friends. We respected each other. We adored each other, but sex just wasn't happening. And so that's when I kind of went back to my search and thought, what if I brought this on? What if this was sort of the solution for us? And again, there was nothing out there about this, but it was the middle of the pandemic. And at the time I was just starting to become really, really obsessed with fitness. I really like lifting. I really like just the idea of muscle-centric medicine. And so because I couldn't go to a gym because of the pandemic, I started doing a lot of body weight training exercises. And so I started learning a lot about muscle biomechanics. So I thought, well, surely the muscles that surround the vagina are not that different to any other muscles. They shouldn't be that different to my glutes or to my biceps or to my lat muscles. So assuming they behave the same way, how can I train them with the same fitness concepts that I train any other muscle? How can I learn speed and flexibility and mobility and power and strength? And so I started I started learning about the pelvic floor muscles and how they surround the vagina, and how we have an anterior wall, a posterior wall, a right wall, a left wall, and then different levels of depth. And so I started thinking about it in terms of planes of motion. I started thinking about it in terms of different fitness components, and I started designing my own training. And throughout that time, I was like, okay, I'm going to start practicing. I started practicing. I started trying things out in the bedroom, and my ex-partner at this point, which we're really good friends with still, he likes to say that he was the first product tester of this, because I started trying things out on him, and he absolutely loved it, and I absolutely loved it. So our sex life, as I continued to train, continued to improve and improve and improve, and it came to a point where it felt like we were just 14 years old discovering sex for the first time. We were just horny all the time. We were using the pandemic for what I wanted us to use the pandemic for, basically. And so that's when he was actually the one who said, Belle, you should teach this to other women. So I went back to some forums online of women who were actually looking for this stuff. And again, there was no actual step-by-step information on this, just stories about women through history with magic vaginas. And so I just messaged some of the people there and I was like, hey guys, I know this forum is, 5 years old at this point, but I developed a plan. I can just coach you for free. I'm not certified. I'm not a doctor. Let me just coach you for free. And so some women said yes. And so I started coaching women in different parts of the world, completely online, and just telling them what I had learned. And they started becoming my guinea pigs on this, right? And that's kind of how it started growing, because women started having, much, much, much more intense orgasms. Some women started having vaginal orgasms for the first time. And that was the thing that kept coming up for us, because a lot of these women, sometimes we talk about the clitoral orgasms, and that's where we have a lot of our focus on right now when it comes to female sexuality. But a lot of women don't actually enjoy penetration, don't actually enjoy or have even had penetrative orgasms. And that's something that kept coming up. The first thing was my boyfriend, my partner, is absolutely obsessed with me now. The second thing was like, I had no idea I could come from penetration. This is crazy. Everything feels so much more intense. And the third thing is, well, I am extremely horny. What is going on? Why am I so horny all the time? I feel like a 14-year-old boy who just discovered, porn. This is crazy. And so I was like, okay, what is the science behind this? So that's when I started talking to some doctors and some pelvic floor physicians and trying to understand what is the science behind this. And to be honest, I was a little disappointed with the amount of information that we currently have on this, because while, yes, we have a lot of research on pelvic floor training, there is nothing to this degree. And every single research that we have on women, on intervention studies where women, there's a control group and then a group of women who start training their pelvic floors, every single one of them done is extremely positive when it comes to female libido, when it comes to female pleasure, when it comes to orgasms, lubrication. And yet, no one's talking about this. And yet women are spending thousands of dollars on vaginal rejuvenation surgeries, on tightening creams, on testosterone replacement therapy for libido. And before we go through all of that, we can actually just work on our bodies. So that was something that really just enraged me a little bit. And I'm like, okay, I need to get this out there. I need to get this out there. And that's kind of how it all started. So that's a very long-winded answer.
I love it. And so there's so many places
Oh, yeah.
that I want to dive in. I mean, one, right, like with medicine, we so often wonder, what is the chicken? What is the egg? Was I disconnected to my pelvic floor and then my hormones declined? Or did my hormones declined and then my vaginal area became dry and painful? Like a lot of times in medicine, we know how something happened, but we don't really know the why. We don't know the deeper root. And so this piece that you're pointing to, by simply being, engaged in a daily practice, it doesn't even start off daily, right? It starts off once or twice a week, right? And then you slowly build this relationship, I would say, right? You're building a relationship with the most intimate parts of yourself.
100%.
And then lubrication, desire, strength, control are, they're a clear byproduct, but one of the things that I'm curious about in your own life is like, what did you notice within yourself as you developed that relationship to your body?
Well, the first thing we noticed in a very just anecdotal research and clinical and yeah, what we noticed was, for me, it was libido. For me, that was the biggest sort of change.
Didn't you already have a strong libido?
I
guess
had
that's
a really
the part I
strong...
want to clarify. It was your partner who didn't, which is another thing I want to bookmark and come back to.
Yes,
but yeah,
we don't think about men not having a strong libido, right? So for us, it was libido. I'd always had, so something that happened to me was when you have a partner with a low libido and you're the partner with a higher libido, which has always been my case. If your partner is very low libido, it kind of, what started happening to me at the time was like, I just started losing touch with that part of myself as well, because it wasn't happening. And the more, it's almost like what you don't use, you lose. So it was kind of like I stopped becoming, I was becoming less and less sexual as time went on. And I was very resentful of that, because I loved that part of myself. I really did. It was something that I just found, we spoke a little bit about this before we started recording, but sexuality makes you feel very alive. And that was something that I just resented not having sex because of that. Right. And so when we started having, obviously when this started, we found this new approach to sex, and we started having sex more often. And then both our libidos, for him came back after a long time, and for me it came back after some very short time. So for me it was very much reconnecting with a very fundamental part of myself. The other thing that happened to me specifically was I I started connecting with I touched on this with my femininity. And again, for me, that had always been, I'd always felt very masculine. I really like sports. I really like business. If you see my YouTube recommendations, YouTube basically thinks I'm a man. I like politics and physics and and weight training and like biohacking, and like I listen to very male audience heavy podcasts all the time. And so you would definitely think, every algorithm thinks I'm a dude. So I'm super close to having erectile dysfunction ads targeting me. But it's always been the case. I've always been kind of tomboyish. And this sort of idea of connecting with your very intimate parts of yourself makes you feel like a woman. It's almost a controversial thing to say nowadays, but it makes you reconnect with your feminine being. And this is a phrase that I never thought I would say, but that was something that was huge for me. But for other women, the biggest thing was vaginal orgasms. And I keep hammering on this because that wasn't a problem for me. Vaginal orgasms have never been an issue for me. But this was something that my friends always said to me, like, penetration is more like what he wants to do. Like, I really like it when he goes down on me. I really like it when he, touches my clit. And that's really what I care about. But penetration, whatever, it's a guy humping me. It doesn't really do much for me. And to me, that was insane. So I kind of used my friends as guinea pigs with this. And I was like, try this, try this, try this. And that's done. That's when things were like just fascinating to me, because these girls kept coming up to me and they're like, I did not know. I had no idea I could even enjoy this. These are now my favorite. And a friend of mine puts it phenomenally well, which she says, clitoral orgasms are great, but once you kind of have one, you're kind of exhausted. Whereas with vaginal orgasms, you keep going, you have one, and you're like, let's keep going, let's keep going, let's keep going. You keep going and going. It's just something that even that continues to turn you on more and more and more, and you just keep going. It's very addictive. And I was like, yes, yes. And then we can even go into the conversation of the cervical orgasms, the A-spot orgasms, the really deep, deep, deep orgasms, and a lot of women who are like, I didn't even know I could enjoy deep penetration. It kind of felt like almost uncomfortable to me. And now, because we're training the really deep levels of the vagina, that becomes very pleasurable as well. So it's just it's been phenomenal, and it's been great to see the results for other people, because I feel like every woman will have a different benefit that resonates with her more than others.
It's so great. I love hearing you describe the different types of pleasure because, like, well, one of the things that we talked before we started recording, but as a physician, I so often hear
Mm.
women say, they speak of sex like an obligation. It's a box to check.
That's
I'm
crazy. That's
providing
crazy.
sex. I'm doing it for him, or it feels obligatory. And,
Yeah.
and I often think, like something critical is missing if that is the framework, right? Like I think in Emily Nagoski's book, Come Together, she talks about
Hmm.
how human beings are wired for the pursuit of pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And if you
Mm-hmm.
have no interest in sex, there's a really good chance the pleasure is missing.
Yeah.
And this level of being connected to yourself, right, gives access to such a deep form of I mean, well, truly, like literally a deep form of pleasure, but also figuratively a deep form of pleasure that I think is important because when it's looked at as obligatory, right, then it's instead of being nourishing, it's draining. And I think on some level, right, like we're missing this piece around connection. One of the questions that I have for you, would have so
Mhm.
many, but you talked about growing up in this religious, not just a religious family, but a religious country. You know, it was a very faith-based place. And I find myself wondering if there was ever a sense of shame that you had to work through or overcome around your sexuality because of any, I mean, not that by all means, religion is not the only way that we get messages
Sure,
around
sure, sure, sure,
shame.
sure.
You know,
Absolutely.
I grew up without any religion in my life, and I internalized a lot of shame around pleasure and sexuality. But I do find myself wondering if there was a connection there for you and actually like an integration of self that came as you did these practices.
To be fair, something that I will say about Argentina is that we are kind of a mix between a Latin American country and a very European country. In fact, most of us are European. So it's a very interesting blend. I in the book I describe my parents as hippie Christians, and this is something that I use a lot to describe the Roman Catholics in Argentina because we are the sort of Christians who believe that, weed was put in the world because God wanted us to smoke it. And sex, God wants us to have. So it's a very I would say it's a very healthy relationship with faith. It's actually a very we don't believe, at least not anymore. I'm not saying that it was always the case, but we don't believe in this punishment God. We believe very much in a human-centered God that wants us to do good but also feel good. So I think it's a very healthy sort of faith that I think we have, which is one of the few things that I can say that I'm actually very proud of. Well, I'm very proud of many things, but that's something that I'm really proud of in terms of the culture in Argentina. And there's a lot of youth groups. Religion is actually pretty ingrained in youth as well, but it's just getting together, and we talk about how faith is part of how you can feel God in your friendships, how you can feel God in your relationships with your parents. And so it's almost like the word God could be replaced by how some atheists believe that the universe works or energy works. Or so it's almost like this very, I think it's a very positive way of looking at the world. I'm not necessarily religious, but I like to say that I'm spiritual, and I think sexuality is very spiritual in some ways. I think when we experience pleasure to those degrees, and you can't even explain it, sometimes you have this connection with someone that it feels outer worldly. That's where I think some spirituality also connects with sex as well.
So beautifully put. Thank you for that. Okay, and then another question that I have just based on your intro and how you got here,
Mm,
talk about this in the book. And
yeah.
so for people who haven't read your book yet, first read the book. But also, one of the things that I was curious about is that you talked about, if I remember correctly, your partner had been shamed for an experience, if I remember correctly, like premature ejaculation, maybe?
I know it was he couldn't
Oh, for erectile
yes, erectile
dysfunction.
dysfunction. It was actually, yes.
Okay, and one
Yes.
of the
The
things that you
opposite.
mention in the book, which I'd love to hear more about, is that one of the things that helped him to come back was that it was framed as part of a practice as opposed to framed around let's have sex. It,
Yeah.
right? And that
Yeah.
opened up something for it was like allowed him to bypass part of what was really challenging for him. Can you talk more about that? Because I think that when couples are dealing, whether it's the male or the female who's had some sort of challenge, the
Mm-hmm.
pressure to be done with that
Oh my
and
God.
over
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
creates the obstacle.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and you just talked in the book about a way of navigating that was almost like a back door into something where he could rediscover himself. Can you tell us more about that, please?
That's so well framed. I love this question. Um, it's really interesting because I'd been on two relationships. So I was very I was very like I was very blind to male issues when it came to this stuff. I was very much of the belief that, men always want to go and they're always ready, and because that's how, most of us are brought up. Men are the ones who always want sex, and females are usually having a headache, and that's, to me, that was not the experience. I was like, I kind of really want to have sex all the time. But so that was a big thing for me, because at the beginning I was like, well, there has to be something wrong with me, because if you don't want to have sex with me, and men are supposed to be want to have sex all the time, this, it's clearly a problem that I have. And he was, he's phenomenal man, and he always reassured me that that wasn't the case. But when he finally opened up that he had been shamed about the situation, sex became a performance that he didn't know if he was going to be able to show up for. So it was like, oh God, is this going to happen again? Oh God, is this going to happen again? And if you're going to sex with that idea, this fear, it's the least, like, fear is the last thing you want to feel when you're about to get down, right? Like, it's the opposite. Even like, it's the last response your body will have when you're being stressed and you're being fearful. Like, our bodies, the last thing we want is to have sex, because our bodies interpret, okay, there's a lion running up after us. Don't, the last thing you want is to have more kids right now because you're in a situation of danger, right? So even from an evolutionary perspective, it makes no sense to be horny when you're stressed or fearful. And he was both of those. So for me, I was like, well, how can I bring something to the equation that kind of shifts the perspective? Right now, sex for him is work. It is something that he does for me. It is something that he is fearful that he's not going to be able to perform at. How can I bring this up in a very gentle way? And so my idea was, how can I bring Pompoir or vaginal gymnastics as an experiment that I kind of want to try, and like, hey, you know what? I've been training on this. Like, do you mind if we like just relax, just lay down, see if I can try some of this stuff, because I think it's, it sounds kind of cool. I want to see what this is about. And so I just made him relax. We had found out some ways for him to sort of be able to have an erection just in a more easy way without him having to do sex. So I was like, okay, just relax and let me see if I can try this out. And what do you feel? And that's when I would ask, okay, what does this feel like? What does this feel like? And it was almost like a massage kind of thing, right? And that's when he started like, oh my God, what is happening, right? What is this? What is this? And so that's the way that I kind of introduced it. I was very, very gentle about it at first, and it was very much something where he could just relax, and I wanted his brain to associate sex and pleasure with something that he didn't have to work for or at and excel at, right? And slowly but surely doing it that way then eventually got him feeling the opposite way, being like, oh my God, I just want to do this all the time. I just want to feel this all the time. And it started creating this loop of like, sex feels really great now. If this is what sex is now, this is amazing. I love it. And it just created a completely new relationship with it, right? It was this sort of Pavlovian sort of connection now in his brain. So yeah, it was a very particular situation, and in most of my students, they don't need to introduce it this way. It's just something that just happens much more sporadically. But for me, because my situation was very much wanting to help him, it had to happen that way. And I'm glad that it did. So yeah.
No, I think it's a great framework, right? Because
Mm,
I think it is true that as a cultural narrative, we have this
mm.
idea that men always want to and women always want an excuse not to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it creates shame and heartache on both sides.
It's
I've worked with
terrible. It's a
women,
terrible belief.
yeah, I've worked with women who have been told by male partners, you're not supposed to want it this much, and
Oh
I
God.
I've also I think, like seen men who are like, what's wrong with me that I don't want it
That I
more?
don't want it all the time.
So just
Mm,
normalizing. It's a
mm,
full
mm,
spectrum,
mm.
and that, shame or emotional injury plays a toll. Not long ago, I spoke to a woman, who said like, I have no libido, but it turns out that like as she's aging, it takes her, more than 3 to 4 minutes to orgasm. But then the pressure, how will his ego be damaged if I don't? It's like
Oh
all of
God.
these things start to get in the way. And so then this idea, well, let's just practice a skill, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I found in my own relationship that saying, I'm not sure if I'm squeezing or contracting.
Mm-hmm.
Borrow you to practice is quite a compelling offer.
Oh yeah, they generally don't complain. But it's interesting because it's like it's such a non it's such a low risk thing to say, right? It's such a, hey, let's try this out. Let's I want to I've been reading about this kind of, I'm just kind of curious what this, it's very it's very low pressure, low stakes. And for us it was definitely what was needed. So yeah.
Okay, so talk to us more about what Pompoir is, right? Because you mentioned independently engaging all of the
Mm-hmm.
muscles that support the vaginal wall. We've talked about it being gymnastics and kung fu, but I think to better illuminate, the practices, the skill, when I first read about twisting a penis, I was like,
Amazing.
I, it's like, it was hard to wrap my head. It's actually
There's no way, right?
still hard to wrap my head
Mm.
around that. So just tell
Mhm.
us more about what the practices are and then what is possible as you engage and train in this way.
Amazing. So Pompoir, or the way that I like to call it, vaginal gymnastics, is essentially complete mastery of the muscles that surround the vagina. So being able to do all sorts of techniques such as squeezing and whipping and locking and milking and twisting and wringing and rocking and rubbing. We have all of this. We stopped counting at 36. But all of these exercises that sound extremely crazy, and it seems like you have a bop it instead of a vagina, and it's like a toy where pop it, lock it. Basically, what is happening is the combination of the movements of the different walls, right? So we talk about 12 vaginal zones, and I talk about this in the book. So I kind of touched on the different planes of movements. And so if you think about the vagina is an orifice, and you have this, imagine a cylinder, if you will, inside of you, right? You have the front of your vagina, you have the back of your vagina, you have the right side of your vagina, you have the left side of your vagina, but you also have different levels of depth. So if you were to divide the vagina up between three levels of depth, at the entrance, at the middle, the heart of the vaginal canal, and at the top near the cervix, you have three levels. But then you have six levels because you have the entrance, but the right side, the entrance only at the left side, the middle, right side, the middle, left side, the top right side, the top left side. And then you have the front and the back. And that's when we when we divide the vaginal canal in so many levels, and we teach you how to identify and isolate and move each of those unique regions of training in isolation. That's when it makes sense to be like, oh, okay, so say that you squeeze the entrance of the vagina, and so you're basically pressing your horizontal walls together in one way, but at the same time, you're contracting at the top. It's a completely different move than if you were to squeeze at the entrance, then the middle, then the top in a sort of wave-like motion, which is what we call whipping. So basically, all of these exercises are combinations of all of these walls, as well as fitness components such as speed, rhythm, mobility, endurance. For example, you have a hold or an isometric contraction where you contract and you hold that contraction at the top, building endurance, and also it feels very, very pleasurable. So basically, all of these moves are sort of like positions of muscles inside your vagina. It's almost as if when I like to relate it to music because I come from a musical family and I really like music. And so how you see a guitar player suddenly do all these shapes with their hands to play the different chords. We all have the ability to do those shapes with our hands. We just haven't learned them. So it's basically that. You're just learning how to position the different muscles and different actually tiny muscle fibers inside your vagina in different ways and move them in different ways. So that's really what is going on. It's not a crazy magical thing. It's just actual training of all of these skills.
It's great. And in your course, one of the things you do so well is lay it out with visuals,
Yeah, the
bringing the
course is very
speed,
visual, very visual.
which helps to illuminate
Mm.
something that I think many of us think of as like it works or it doesn't work. There's like an
Yeah,
on-off switch as opposed to there's actually so much nuance,
it's insane.
endless amounts of nuance in, lifting, squeezing, contracting, and then, like you said, the different levels. Talk to us a little bit about some of the research. You said earlier, all pelvic floor research shows, these benefits.
Overwhelmingly positive. Yeah.
Um, and then you're hoping to do more, but highlight again, like what are the benefits? Like, let's say I'm a single woman and I'm watching you and I'm like, why might I do this if I'm not interested? Or um maybe I'm in a female-female relationship and I'm not that interested in, you know, twisting and magic tricks. What are the other benefits for a woman?
So the most research benefit of having a strong pelvic floor is pleasure from any sort of penetration. So pleasure from penetration from your fingers, whether it's a toy, whether it's a penis, doesn't matter what it is. It's way more pleasure when it comes to penetration because you feel, I don't like to use the word tighter, but it is essentially you feel tighter because you're building muscle around those walls, but you're also drawing in more blood to that region when you get aroused. So you're getting that lubrication, you're making any sort of penetration feel really good and really comfortable, but you're also that much tighter. And this is something that a lot of women report that they stop experiencing as they grow older. As we lose collagen and elastin, our vagina starts feeling a little bit looser. But what maybe not every woman knows is that the muscle layer is still there. You don't need elastin and collagen to keep you tight. You can actually work on a deeper layer, which is the muscular layer. In fact, there's some research that suggests that post-menopause, there are some improvements in how fast you can build muscle as you age. So it's like, so you don't lose the ability to be able to build muscle, and it's something that every person should be doing anyway. But building muscle will make you feel really, really tight and will make everything feel very much enhanced. And it doesn't matter if you're in a female-female relationship, it's likely that you're doing some sort of penetration, even if you're just touching yourself, it's going to feel really, really, really good. And that is the most documented benefit of a strong and a flexible pelvic floor. The second most documented benefit is stronger and more frequent orgasms. And this is very easily understood because when we orgasm, our vaginas contract involuntarily. So you might have experienced this. You're in the middle of your orgasm and you feel like your vagina is like pulsating, and that is an involuntary muscle contraction that you're having during orgasm. It's part of the orgasm loop. The stronger your pelvic floor muscles are, the stronger these involuntary orgasmic contractions get, therefore the stronger the orgasms. So that's the second one. The third one is libido, and that's something that we spoke about. And a lot of women come to us, especially peri and postmenopausal, that they come to us and they're like, I used to have a really high libido. I don't anymore. I don't know what to do. I'm thinking about testosterone replacement therapy. I'm thinking about all of these things. I don't know what to do. And so I'm like, well, before you consider all of these things that are probably very helpful, let's see if we can work with what you've already got. And this is something that there hasn't been a woman that we haven't been able to help with this yet, because training these muscles in the way that we train them increases lubrication, increases arousal, increases, again, blood flow to that region. So it makes you, it basically speeds up the loop of arousal. So you get aroused much faster. And you get aroused, and the whole loop of orgasm, arousal to orgasm, gets shorter. So you get more orgasms more frequently. And they're also feeling really good. So it's just a win-win-win. And then we have all the benefits that I talk about this in the book, that we have benefits that we don't understand as of yet. And that's why I want to put forward research. And that's hopefully in the works for this year, because it's what I really, really want us to have some literature specifically on this type of training, because all of the research that we have right now is on very basic forms of pelvic floor training, your Kegels, your pelvic floor contractions, just what we would call beginner level Pompoir. So we see all these benefits, but I want to see what happens when we train them to the degree that we train them, with all of these components of fitness, all of these walls, all of this training, unique regions, right? And what we've seen is that what we've seen in women time and time again is that they report having an increase in all other types of orgasms, not just that they're having much more pleasure when it comes to penetration, not just that they're having a lot more orgasms when it comes to vaginal stimulation, but that they're orgasming faster when it comes to just intimacy. So they might be getting, their neck kissed, and suddenly they start feeling this wave and their vagina starts pulsating, and suddenly they orgasm. And it's like, what just happened? And obviously their partners are like, I am the man, I am God.
I love the story in the book about when you were giving a blowjob and
Oh
orgasm.
no. Oh, and it was, I am God, I am Jesus incarnated. And like, no, this didn't happen before. It's clearly not you, but just don't tell me. This keeps happening too. And I get so many emails about this. I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is this? What is this witchcraft? We were just kissing. We were dry humping, and I orgasmed. I felt so embarrassed. And by the way, if you ever feel embarrassed about orgasming too fast, I can guarantee you men find it extremely hot. There is no man on earth that does not find that very, very hot. They're like, this is crazy. And they think it's them. So it's like complete boost to their egos. But it's what we believe is happening is that this practice just really optimizes the loop of arousal, oxytocin release, orgasmic contractions, just all heart pumping, all of this blood circulation, the uterus shifting, everything that happens when you are going to orgasm, it's just optimized. So that's what we think is happening. And we also think what's happening is that we are creating a very deep psychological connection to your pelvic floor. So when you train and even if you get the book or you get the course, we talk about this all the time. There's a lot of mind-muscle connection. And we talk about imagining your partner, whether it's, a female partner and it's her fingers, or whether it's a toy, or whether it's a male partner and it's a penis. Imagining your partner inside of you. And for example, when we do a movement called sucking, which is a very third level cervical contraction, imagining stimulating the tip of the penis, right? And up and down and up and down. So you're basically thinking about sex and prompting yourself to think about sex multiple times per week. So you're just building this connection to sex, even in your head, constantly. And something that you might have noticed if you've been following the workouts, the workouts in themselves can be a little bit stimulating. So a lot of the women are like,
Come with a warning.
I need to schedule 15 extra minutes after my workout just to either take a cold shower or masturbate, because I just get very, very aroused, they say, right? So It's very common because there are some exercises that just by themselves are rubbing against your most erogenous regions. They're rubbing against your G-spot. They're rubbing against your cervix. You're just stimulating your vagina, and you're drawing in a lot of blood. So you're just getting aroused, and you're adding the mental mind-muscle connection. So you're mentally thinking about sex. So it's very common that you'll be very aroused as you train. So we're basically making you a sex machine. That's all I can say. You're just prompt to think about sex much more often, prompt to get lubricated and tighter and feeling more intense much more often. So those are some of the things that we keep finding out that I really want to get research behind and actually show what is happening.
I can't wait for that.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, so curious. Like, are you releasing more oxytocin? What happens
What
to,
is happening?
your testosterone levels as you do this training? I'm so curious about vaginal atrophy with perimenopausal and menopausal women. I mean, it would make sense that as you're doing all of these things to improve blood flow, that the health of the tissue
Mhm,
will be more
mhm, mhm,
robust.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
Now you don't utilize tools like the yoni eggs or jade eggs. Is that because you don't think they're necessary, or do they simply come from a different lineage? Like, I was just curious, like, is that kind of a coincidence, or is that on purpose that you don't utilize external tools?
It started very much as a coincidence because I started training during the pandemic. I couldn't really go out. Buenos Aires had a crazy lockdown. I think we were like one of the strictest lockdowns. So I couldn't really go out and buy anything. And so I didn't have Kegel weights or Yoni X or anything like that. So I just started training as if it were calisthenics, just complete body weight. And so because I started noticing all of these effects without anything, when people ask me, do I need to buy this stuff? I'm like, look, I didn't. Let's just start with what you have. And just because they started seeing results without it, it was just that's kind of how it developed. And so we do recommend tools on certain situations. So for example, if there's a case where your pelvic floor muscles are actually starting from a very weak point, maybe because you've just delivered, or maybe you had a tear, or maybe there's a condition, you could consider using some Kegel weights so that you can add some resistance and get some progress just quicker. Generally, your muscles will recover just with exercise, but if you want to add some tools and make the whole process faster, you can. Um, if you're going through a strength plateau, you can use them as well for this. And then there are some tools like, recently we partner with Perifit, and the Perifit is something that I absolutely love. And it's just bio feedback device. So it's just a probe that you insert, and it tells you the strength of your contractions. Not just the strength, but the quality of your contractions, your endurance, how much you can hold a contraction for. And those are great when people are like, how do I know if I'm making progress? If I'm single, for example, if I don't have a partner who can tell me or where I can feel it, like, how do I know if I'm doing the exercises right? For example, the Perifit or some biofeedback device can be very useful. For the most part, your two fingers are going to be your best friends. I always talk about this, not even your partner, because chances are if you have a male partner, they're just going to love everything that you do. They're just going to think you're just a goddess sent from, some magical land. So they're not going to be very helpful. I remember when I was trying to do this sort of research sex with my then partner, I was like, where do you feel this specifically? Maybe like, oh, this is great, baby. This is fantastic. No, 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 no. Where specifically are you feeling this? Because this is important. And that's very hard. So chances are they're not going to be extremely useful for that. They're just going to love it. So ideally you want to use your fingers, and for some very specific and more complex skills like turning something to one side or the other, a vibrator, a dildo, something where you can see what's happening outside of your vagina and turning from one side to the next, that's going to be very useful. But there's nothing that you need. Like that's something that I want to really stress. You don't need any tools. You can theoretically master every skill without any.
And it does not take very long. I mean, well, mastery can take a while, but
Complete mastery can
improvement.
take a while, but improvement, It's remarkably fast. It
Yes.
is remarkably
I
fast.
think it's
Yes.
really encouraging to think that, in the matter of 6 weeks, you could
Oh,
talk about
yeah.
having a dramatic
Oh, dramatic.
shift.
I,
6 months, it's like altering.
it's crazy. It's crazy. I think it's the concept of the newbie gains. They talk about this in fitness all the time, how someone, when they start lifting weights for the first time, they'll experience really fast results because their muscles have never been stimulated that way. It's basically the same. Even if you've done Kegels in the past, moving your right wall in isolation to your left wall, and pressing with your front and then with your back, and all of these different skills that we're doing, I can guarantee you've never done this. So you're going to just make progress very, very fast. Yeah, people are very surprised. Everyone comes back and they're like, I thought it would take months. It's like, no, no, no. You get some really, really crazy skills very fast. Now, there are some skills that are much more complex, and we just released a completely advanced course where we're talking about ringing, twisting the top of your vagina to one side and the bottom to the other. That can take you like 6 months of dedicated training. Absolutely. But most of the skills, 6 weeks, you got them. Yes.
Wow. Okay, I
Yeah.
do have another question that it's not directly related to Pompoir. Is that okay?
Please.
It's related to your story though, because you mentioned doing this sex ed class, being 14,
Mm,
15 years old, and beginning a pleasure exploration.
mhm.
And something that stood out to me in your personal history is actually your teacher saying, if you're having sex but you don't even know what you like, then, there's a chance you're not. I mean, I don't know if somebody can do sex wrong, but like you're potentially leaving something on the table, right? You're not maximizing the benefit. What I'd really love to hear is your thoughts on the importance of pleasure exploration, of a pleasure practice, like just the process of self-discovery. What lights me up, what turns me on, so that I bring like a gnosis, like this knowledge of self into my exchange with my partner. Do you have thoughts on that, given that you did it for 6 years prior to any partnered experience?
It was, well, I can tell you what my first time was really, really positive, which is something that most of my friends could not say for their first time. But it was because I knew what I liked, I knew what I enjoyed. And so that was very different. I masturbated for nearly a decade before I had sex for the first time. So it was a lot. It was 6 years of unadulterated masturbation. And so I already enjoyed it a lot. And so um the guy was definitely surprised. My boyfriend was definitely surprised that was something that I would enjoy as a virgin. But it was great. And I think also a lot of people, when we talk about, so many women that they've always believed that sex was something that they have to do, or it's something that, it's kind of part of the relationship. It's kind of something that you need to do to just kind of keep your husband happy. That's something that's deeply ingrained, and it probably comes from the fact that maybe you did start having sex without actually knowing what you like, or maybe you haven't masturbated, or maybe you don't know, you haven't done this self-exploration. It's crucial, because if you don't, then sex becomes whatever you've always done with the other person, and the other person cannot read your mind. You know we sometimes, and this is something that it's it's probably not ideal. If we just leave it up to the guy to decide what we like or what we don't like, they're just gonna go, it's the blind leading the blind, really. They can have as much, as many guesses as you can about what you're going to enjoy. And if that's continues being your experience, it is just going to be something that you don't even know if you enjoy that much. So I think it's crucial. And I think it's crucial not just for sex with other people, but um, I think we should start looking at sexuality as part of our wellness routine. And I think the same thing about social interactions, especially now in a world where we're just so connected by devices. But um, we something good that's happening in the world, I think, is that we are becoming very conscious about our health. We're becoming very conscious about, training and exercise and sleep and eating right and, cold plunges and all of these wellness routines that we do and staying hydrated and all of this. Great. We should start considering elements like social interactions, like sex, as part of those wellness routines, because the literature supports that they are fantastic for longevity, fantastic for your mood, fantastic for your peace of mind. It's almost a running joke that when a woman has been having really great sex, she has this glow about herself. And it makes sense, right? You've been releasing all of this beautiful hormones of connection and of happiness. It makes sense. And so this is something that we should start exploring as a wellness, as part of our wellness routine. Self-exploration, whether you have a partner or not, being sexual with yourself, I think is crucial if we want to live happier and longer lives. And so this is something that the women in my course will keep saying, even if they don't have a partner, they're like, I just walk around differently. I just walk with this sort of confidence and happiness, and like I feel like giddy. I feel like a kid. I feel like everything is possible. And it's like, yeah, you've been releasing oxytocin for the last 3 hours. Of course, you feel like everything is possible. It's beautiful. And that's what life should be all the time. I feel like we're used to our default state being stress or ennui, like stress or boredom or just complete lack of engagement with the world. And I think it's very important that we're only here in this world shortly. Like these lives are so short. We're not gonna live like we're kids and happy and feeling pleasure. As long as you're not hurting anyone else, and this is definitely going to do the opposite, just try to live life to the fullest. And this should be just part of that routine of happiness and longevity, I think.
Yes to that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Like we started off with this conversation around aliveness.
I love
And
that.
what you just said, right? Sex as part of the wellness routine. As a physician, I just wholeheartedly agree. Like I said, but before we started recording, we talked about like, who cares if your blood sugar is balanced and your lipids are normal, if you're lacking the essence of aliveness.
I love that.
And you just
I love
captured
that.
it so well, releasing endorphins, releasing the oxytocin, like
Mm,
immersing ourselves.
mm,
Pleasure leaves us
mm.
confident, full of joy,
Wanting
energy,
to connect.
vitality.
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and you see this, and I'm obsessed with the. I'm currently obsessed with the blue zones. Those places around the world where people live up to 100, and most people will live up to 100. And you know how researchers thought, it's probably because they don't drink alcohol or they exercise a lot or they eat very healthy diets. Nope. It's actually because they just have a huge connection with their community. They're just, their doors are open. You go there and you drink wine with your neighbor and you play cards and it's just complete social interaction and that release of happiness hormones all the time. And that's what keeps us alive. We are social beings and we're losing that. And I think sex is another part of that. And I spoke about this on another podcast. Just, we're seeing this sexless generation, and people are having actually less sex. And I think it has to do with the lack of just social connections that we're having just overall as a society. So that would be very sad to see. Yeah, life is better together. So yeah.
But we've covered a lot of ground. Any closing thoughts? Anything else where you're like, I wish you had asked me this so I could share?
It's just that this was so wonderful. I just loved all those questions. You're a phenomenal interviewer. You're just a phenomenal host. I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. How can those listening follow your work? Like I said, definitely read the book. Number one, do the course. But tell those of us, where can we find you? How can they follow and engage?
You can find everything. You can find the book, you can find the course. We do one-on-one coaching, but you can find also a lot of free resources like the blog, like all the podcasts that I've been, our YouTube channel, or social media stuff. Everything is at gohdess.com, gohdess.com. You can find everything there. So I just wanted it to be a hub where you can just in one place have access to everything, whatever way you like to consume things. Something that I don't know if I mentioned is that none of what we do is pornographic in the slightest. You've seen the book and the course as well. All of those are images like graphics, and like they're colorful, and they don't really look like they just look like graphics and illustrations. Because a big part of me was like, if I'm teaching women like my mom, or other moms, I don't want a woman to be, training in her room with the videos and a little kid to walk in and be traumatized for life. So it all looks like beautiful, colorful, purple images and shapes, but they're very, very helpful to visualize what's going on inside of you. And you'll see that in the book. The book is very graphic, and obviously the course is just all animations.
Graphic, like illustrated, not
illustrated. I'm sorry. No, zero. That's the language barrier. Zero porn, no actual pictography of any kind. It's all illustrations, all drawings, and very, yeah. Unless you knew what you were reading, you wouldn't know what it is. It's interesting.
Yes, it's very well done, actually. And it's true. It paints a picture that really helps you to find a connection. But it looks more like a pear that's shortening and lengthening.
Correct.
Right. And I love how the colors change and the rhythms, the timers. It's a very thorough presentation of the material.
Thank you. That was something that was key for me. Yeah, because I wanted it to be friendly for anyone. And luckily we've achieved that. I had an email this morning from a woman who's 81 in Georgia, and I'm like, this is what I wanted. Okay, great. Because I didn't want anyone. Yeah, it's just that I feel like sometimes sex education can feel like it's just for certain people who are already pretty comfortable with these conversations. And sex should be for everyone, not just people who are already very, very, comfortable with sexual conversations. For everyone, even people who maybe are a little bit intimidated by it. So yeah, that's really what my goal was. So I'm happy that the people are responding.
So great. Thank you again. Thank you for being with us. I just really want to acknowledge and appreciate the studiousness that you bring to this conversation. And I really mean that, because I do think that so many people, they're intrigued by, the lure of sex. And there's a part of that for you, but you bring to it an academic pursuit that allows your work, in my opinion, to bridge barriers. And I love, your humor and your youthfulness that just comes hand in hand with the curiosity. The fact that you're coming to the States to partner with a physician to do more research and to answer deeper questions is really an honor to those of us who are committed to the conversation around aliveness. So thanks for being with us, and thanks for everything you do.
Oh, I can't wait. It's just me trying to be part of the cool science people club.
Welcome.
My excuse.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dawn. It's been wonderful. Love chatting with you.